So as you all know, concurrent social and geopolitical trends are impacting the way companies are disclosing their long-term sustainable value creation strategies. This session will highlight key trends on companies' disclosure performance and provide insights into how companies are navigating social and geopolitical headwinds. And I'm really pleased to invite our very own Jenna Moore, Senior Manager, ESG and Sustainable Business Insights at CECP, and Molly Kohrs, Director, Data Citizens and Purpose at KPMG, for a spotlight on investing in society. I will move out of your way, Art.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, clicker. Oh. Thanks, Annika. And in true CECP fashion, we'll close out the day with some more data in case you don't have enough of it already. As Annika mentioned, I'm delighted to be joined by Molly Kohrs from KPMG. Molly is Director of Data Citizenship with Purpose. She has over 15 years of experience with KPMG, worked with a variety of government entities and nonprofits to address pressing issues, including education and opportunities for youth, housing and health equity. And Molly currently leads the scoping and delivery of projects at Data Citizens with Purpose. And Molly will share a little bit about her program and KPMG's support of investing in society, and then we'll dive into some of the data points. So Molly.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much for having me, and so lovely to chat with you here today with everyone. So Data Citizens with Purpose at KPMG, we are in our fourth year of this program, and it's really the leading way that our professionals work together for better, two of KPMG's values, with data. And so what that means is, what our program actually is, it's active learning experiences for our professionals that address ESG issues and provide connection to community organizations. And we do that in three different ways. I'm at a very high level going to talk about the first two, but we'll talk mostly about the pro bono engagements. So our university innovation programs is a way that we are investing in the future of the workforce. So providing those data and analytics learning experience, practical learning experiences for high school and university students, thinking about professional services, or encouraging them to think about professional services as a future career. Hackathons are this really safe space internally within KPMG that we provide opportunities for our professionals to work with data to solve and use kind of their creativity and their brains to think innovatively about some ESG issues. It might be how do we solve the structural constraints of expanding our EV network for electric cars? How do we think about health equity in rural areas and across the country, and using data to support those ideas? And then pro bono engagements. This is the program that I lead and is very near and dear to my heart. So we're in our fourth year of this program. We deliver 45 engagements every year, and these are data and analytics engagements for nonprofit organizations pro bono. So we're helping them think about that spectrum of measuring community impact. We had a very fun discussion about that in one of the breakouts, is helping them think about some of our organizations. It's just, what are the outputs to, what are the outcomes, and on that journey towards impact. It might be helping them with their fundraising, their donor information. What's the ROI for those campaigns? How can you think about your strategies to find those donors and work more effectively to do the really great work that you're doing? It might be DEI initiatives. How are they progressing towards those initiatives? And we have access to lots of public data and some licensed data as well that we can supplement with those. But the most important thing, well, the dual most important thing is not just investing in these nonprofits, but it's investing in our people. It's providing these active learning engagements for them to upskill, because we expect our professionals are continuing to advance with data and analytics, technologies, AI. As those are evolving, We want to provide not just the learning experience, those learning journeys, but the actual practical experience of delivering these engagements kind of in a safe space with our community partners, which is really what I love. One last thing that I'll talk about that is really my favorite part of the program is all of our nonprofits are nominated by our professionals. They're organizations that matter to our people. And we have such a large and diverse group of people. We work with nonprofits of all shapes and sizes across the country. So our professionals might serve on a board, they might volunteer, they might donate, but every single organization is nominated by a professional. And that's where we meet our people and see them and what matters to them, which I really love. And so with our partnership with CECP, we were able to do some work with them around ESG reporting, and I won't go into the findings because that's in the slides coming up, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Well, you're very appreciative with your support, and there's a whole team of data scientists behind your team, and it was amazing working with you. So diving into a little bit of the report, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it is our annual report that examines the state of corporate purpose-driven actions around long-term sustainable value. And I know it's a lot of jargon. We try not to be as jargon-heavy, but it comes out. And the report contains case studies and uses quantitative analysis of 47 KPIs on how companies are disclosing around CECP's integrated long-term plan framework. So we've pivoted a little bit this year. In previous editions, it's been centered around ESG, but we've taken a different route this year. And we've also, in previous editions, it's been centered around 3-year data sets. We did 4 years to account for a pre-COVID baseline. I know many of you are currently in the throes of publishing 2023 reports. So that is why we can't analyze 2023 data, because that won't be available until the end of this year. And so you've heard a little bit about CECP's integrated long-term plan framework at multiple points today. I know Carolina talked about it in her breakout. So just quickly, CECP has led the initiative to operationalize long-term value creation in the capital markets. And so the 11 themes you see here are really the key, there's sub-items below the themes, but what you see here are the key subjects that are of most importance to long-term institutional investors as well as other key stakeholders. So our framework helps companies discuss, I know you all have a million things that you're required to report on. This really helps you set the narrative and the context around what you have to report, and then also provide that forward-looking information that many stakeholders are looking for. So turning to the actual report, corporate purpose, which is one of the themes within our framework in the first section within the report. One of the key findings is CEOs, many research reports over the past year have found that CEOs believe corporate purpose is more important than ever. Yet most employees don't really know what their corporate purpose statements are. We found that in a CECP pulse survey from this past March, only 22% of respondents believe that almost all people within their headquartered company or headquartered country would know what their company's corporate purpose is. And then notably, 15% mentioned that their company doesn't have a corporate purpose statement at all. So this really highlights the gap between what the C-suite believes is happening on the ground and what is actually happening on the ground, and an opportunity for companies to really close that gap. Because purpose-driven companies, we've seen reports, Jamie Dimon wrote about it in his letter last year, purpose-driven companies really have the higher return, both people and financially. Turning to diversity, we heard a little bit about this in this morning's panel and a little bit about it in the breakout earlier just now. You really see trends that we've seen over the past couple years in the report. Very slow growth of diversity, gender diversity within organizations. Of course, at the women in the general population of the workforce and middle management has the highest representation of women. But as you move up the corporate ladder, and we've heard this multiple times today, it really narrows. And as you see the bottom in the tealish color, only 8.7% of Fortune 500 companies and 6% of S&P Global 1200 companies have female CEOs. So you really see that narrowing as you get to the top. And then same with the percentage of women on boards. It has grown, which is great. It's grown over the past 4 years, but it's still not making as many strides as we see in other areas of the human capital related KPIs. And Molly, I know KPMG has done a lot of work around this and has some amazing targets set. So could you share a little bit about what you're doing?
Absolutely, and we're not included in this. We're not a publicly traded company, but we, as a partnership, we do publish our DEI targets, and we publish annually our progress towards those. So I think what I'm most proud of as a KPMG employee is our transparency, and that's really how we build trust, is through that public reporting of these are our targets, and being very transparent of how we are progressing towards those. And we're making really good progress in some areas. In some areas, we do have work to do. But I, as a KPMG employee, as well as the broader market, knows how we are progressing on those. And I think that's so important in building that trust and that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And staying on diversity, when the amazing data scientists at KPMG sliced the data a little bit more, we saw some interesting numbers when you looked at companies with female CEOs compared to those with male CEOs. And you notice a striking difference of how much faster companies that are led by female CEOs have increased their gender diversity across all levels of the organization, except for one. I believe it was one in the S&P Global 1200. But across the board, they've accelerated growth throughout all levels of the organization, and notably in the S&P Global 1200, when you look at the percentage of executives within female-led companies and those within male-led companies actually decreased by 6 percentage points the number of female executives, compared to those led by female CEOs increased it by 8%. So a striking difference in what is going on within organizations. Of course, we need to do a little bit more analysis around this to see what the correlations are. But I will note before we move on from diversity, one other striking thing found within the scorecard is only 15% of Fortune 500 companies and 25% of S&P Global 1200 companies had forward-looking diversity targets. So companies are definitely disclosing. You're required to in the US with EEO1, but very few are actually talking about the targets that they're setting, which kind of helps, which might be a factor in why we haven't seen as fast progression. But and then turning to human rights, we've seen a similar rapid growth in how companies are discussing human rights. Many companies have human rights policies. However, we see a gap in those that are actually taking action and implementing the processes and the kind of checks and balances to make sure that companies are really making sure that the human rights policies are being followed throughout all levels of the organization and within their supply chains. So only 46% of S&P Global 1200 companies and 32% of Fortune 500 companies have human rights due diligence processes in place. We really anticipate to see this growing as companies will have to comply with new regulations, particularly in the EU. So we'll definitely see this ticking up over the coming years. And one other point on social. Companies with a community engagement policy has also rapidly grown, and I think probably mostly driven by those of you in this room. So thank you for your diligent work around this. But interestingly, it's still only about a third of Fortune 500 and S&P Global 1200 companies. So still great growth, still a little work to do. And this is around companies having a community engagement policy. So really, how do they interact with the communities they work within and source from, that ensure that they're doing impact assessments, bringing them to the table to discuss how their work impacts them. And then lastly, we have a couple environmental trends that we anticipate seeing continue this year and next. companies will continue adopting transparency for climate-related information. We are approaching 2030, which is a milestone for many companies' emissions reduction targets. So we anticipate seeing more discussion around that. As you all know, there's many new regulations around climate in the US, the EU, elsewhere. Many companies have proposed regulations on the books and are being debated at their legislatures. So we really anticipate seeing more companies discussing those in the near future. And then lastly, biodiversity is a key material topic across all industries. The TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, came out with their framework last year. So we really anticipate that being a larger material topic for companies as we look to the future. And so the report covers a lot, and it is applicable to all types of executives and functions within the organization. So these are just a few snapshots of how it might be applicable to your colleagues, and we encourage you to share this and the report with your peers. And Molly, I know you also had a few closing thoughts you wanted to share.
And this struck me, especially, well, a number of these, and thinking about the Chief Purpose Officer and the CHRO, is how we are empowering our people to invest in society. And so thinking about our program with DCWP, we survey our professionals after every experience and then annually from an outcomes perspective. And the off-the-charts positive experience they have makes us very proud, but it's really those connections that they have both with the community. All of our professionals are choosing to be on those engagements, and they're choosing the organization in which they support. They are connecting across functions, across states. These are all virtual opportunities, so this is another way that we're finding ways for them to network within the firm, externally without the firm, and understanding how they are connecting with our brand and our purpose as a firm. So finding about those opportunities for us to invest in our people pays dividends back to us as well.
Well, we appreciate you investing in your people and investing in us. Thank you.
Thank you.